We gotta go to the bullpen. Welcome to the Highland Bullpen, the all-new podcast bringing America's pastime to Scotland's shores. It doesn't matter if you're a Hall of Famer heading for Cooperstown or you're fresh out of the minor leagues. This is the podcast for you.
So we know the Bullpen Bros enjoy their sport and travelling to see as many different sporting activities as they can. In this episode, Alan's going to invite Dave Jnr. to tell us a bit about his experience watching one of his favourite participation sports, the darts, and how he enjoys living it up with the Premier League superstars.
I was thinking Christmas sports. I used to play football on Christmas Day in Scotland 30, 40 years ago. Boxing Day is now traditional. The old farm game, the Glasgow Derby, you would have your hogmanay drink and get a bus down to Glasgow, actually on New Year's Day, which you look back now and there's no way you would do that now, but I think they tend not to go for the first now, which is more of a policing thing. My other sports aren't really, golf and cycling aren't really Christmas Day sports, although they always say cyclists have to go out training on Christmas Day because psychologically you can't miss Christmas Day because that's seen as a sign of weakness in the pro peloton. The darts would be the best Christmas one I can think of, the PDC Championship. They don't play on Christmas Day itself. Do they just close down? They close down for a couple of days, maybe 2 days, yeah. That is one of the great Christmas TV traditions. Not quite the same this year without the crowds. Or the Grinch. Peter Wright was the Grinch this year.
He looks very good this year. I don't know if you guys seen his... Peter Wright's fairly well known these last few years for pretty exuberant, over the top on stage. Fair play. At his age, he's not a young man, but to put his hair through that every night, he dyes it some other colour and it's caked in some sort of product. His wife, I think, does his hair. I think it takes up to 2 hours. Every night just to do it, so they must actually like each other. He came on the stage full top to toe as the Grinch on the opening night of the World Championships, and when you consider there's a whole lot of pressure at that point, you're the defending world champion, it's opening night, it's a quick fire first of 3 sets at that time of the tournament, so it can be open to get knocked out on the first night. But I think over the years he's started to get a really good relationship with the fans because he's a bit daft. He doesn't take much seriously. Whichever town or whichever country he's in at that moment in time, he tends to soak up to them. And what Alan was talking about there, his hair dyed green, which isn't overly shocking for him, but his full eyebrows and beard, everything was green, top to bottom, and he's a good character to have out there.
Entertainment.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think the PDC, the only 2 days they don't have a schedule on are Christmas Day and Boxing Day, but the final is I'm pretty sure historically it's played on New Year's Day, and that's always a good one to sit and watch. Again, it's not the same this year with the lack of fans, and my current hatred is precise science these days, but when you have piped through crowd noises from someone sitting with a keyboard, it's when you get a delay of even half a second between something good happening and just that noise not being organic. It really feels a bit like canned laughter in a bad comedy show. The PDC are using that just now with the kind of piped in reactions, and it's not the best, to be fair.
Looks like a good night out of that, Skelks.
Oh yeah,
but it looks good.
It's really good. I won't give the name of the venue away, but every year we know where the players stay. For the Premier League, historically it's played on a Thursday night. It's changed a little bit this year. Players travel up on a Wednesday night and they have a good session. and it's not practice on a Wednesday night at this particular hotel. These guys, they are becoming a bit more mainstream. Guys like MVG, like Peter Wright. I think people would recognise them out in the street. Phil Taylor, Barney over the years. It's becoming a bit of more of a mainstream celeb when it comes to sport. They're fantastic. On Thursday itself, there's a bunch of us and we sit in the hotel having drinks, and you can just grab a player, have a chat. As long as you're not arsey about it, they're more than happy to spend 5, 10, 20 minutes just having a chat, having a drink as well. There's no real nutritional regime for them at that point. And I think as long as you're respectful, and if they're clearly just enjoy mingling with fans, that they're more than happy to accommodate people that are coming along, putting their money in and going to have a good night. So it's definitely one we could look to do once things come back.
Is there a correlation between the most disciplined minglers amongst them, Skelts, and the guys that actually play darts well? Or other guys that are good minglers but also manage to play darts well?
No, I mean, I think a couple of years ago, when Michael van Gerwen was at his pomp, maybe 2016, 17, not that he's poor now by any means, he stopped and he was full of the chat, really just up for a blather. And again, it's just, you're not waiting in a queue, there's no pressure. It really was maybe like a big pub, but not a busy pub. So whenever somebody would walk past, you could just maybe put your hand up, and if they had time to stop, they would stop, and most of them did. One of the best ones was Michael Smith was on his way out, coming past us, and we said, "Oh, Michael, have you got a minute?" And we'd offer to buy anyone a pint, and he went, "Oh, lads, I can't. I've really got to nip somewhere really important." And we thought, oh, he's been a wee bit. He wasn't playing that night. We thought, I wonder if he's just putting us off. And about 15 minutes later, he came back through the door and he came straight over to the table. And he went, "I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to be rude. How's your night? How's your day?" And I can't remember who it was, but someone asked him, "What were you going out for?" So apparently Gary Anderson had sent him out for a Mars bar, which apparently he loves before a match. The two of them are big buddies, and he just says, "I can't go out, I'll get mobbed, it's Glasgow." And he sent Michael out to the nearest shop just to get a Mars bar. But it's a nice touch when they come back and they know you're not kind of being intrusive or anything.
Yeah.
They're happy to stop and have a good chat. So the darts is a good night out, Richard, you're right. And I think there's lots of different ways you can do it. Alan and I have both been over the years. I think the really good way to do it, you can get a table, like any of these sporting events we've been to. You can maybe get a table along the side where they walk out, get 4, 6, 10 guys and just enjoy the night and get a wee chat with them as they come out. It's something to look into.
What time of year are they generally in Glasgow at, Skelts, or does it vary?
Oh, the Premier League tends to run, I'm
March,
sure,
Glasgow, is it?
March through to August, but they do mix it up. In the last few years, they've took everything abroad. Again, darts is huge in Holland and Germany. Germany in particular hasn't really produced any really good players, but the Germans are wild for darts. And
I didn't know that, Dave. I didn't know that about Germany. I knew the Dutch played him, but that's interesting.
They've got a few good players out just now. Gabriel Clements and Hop is kind of always about there. But the fans, they're absolutely wild for it. And I think the World Cup is held there every year, and they go nuts. It's a big festival. I'm trying to remember which part of Germany it's held in. It might be Hamburg, but I'm not too sure. But I mean, the darts, they go to Rotterdam every year.
That would make sense to sort of north of Germany.
I'm not surprised the Germans aren't any good at it, Skelts. The Germans are never good at anything.
Anything with precision, yeah.
You said there was one, I think I was flying to the States via Schiphol one year on a Friday, and Van Gerwen and Van Barneveld were on the flight, presumably being, I think it must have been the Premier League the night before. So it was like an early morning flight, but they were on there good to go, reasonably fresh with their agents or managers or whatever with them as well. They're just normal guys waiting in lounge and what have you.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Dave. Now let's hear from Dave Sr. about the time he actually played darts with a world champion. We'll also give you some information on attending a darts event at the SSE Hydro in Glasgow. So enjoy the next listen.
It's a few years ago now, but a friend of mine who, not in that long, he was my first section leader at British Engine in Leeds in 1975. So must have been, he's 7 years older than me. So I think he's coming up for 70 this year for his 60th birthday. So that's nearly 10 years ago. I didn't know he was right into the darts. His favourite player was Wolfie. His name Martin Adams.
Yes, that's right.
I was just checking up on him. He did become world champion, I think, a couple of times, didn't he? Around about, sort of that time, 10 or more years ago. And anyway, his wife, Rosie, she hired out this place. She didn't tell him. And she basically hired Martin Adams, Wolfie. And, he didn't come with an entourage or anything. He just came himself with this, darts scoring machine. And he would just set it up on stage. What a nice guy, by the way. Absolutely. You couldn't meet a nicer bloke. And he would just do a bit of demonstration, and then you would play darts with him. You just queue up and play. I have played, he was that good. He kind of handicapped himself without you realising it. I thought, I'm ahead here. But he was sort of deliberately missing to start at a double. When you got close to a finish, he would just get going and then do the old 180 and then 3 dart, sort of 9 dart or whatever. But what a fantastic guy. Yeah, that's the sort of thing darts players were doing, even a world champion.
Yeah.
Kind of doing his own tour, and I don't know how much it cost to hire him for that night, but he would just travel up himself. He didn't have an assistant. Right?
Where did you go, Dave?
It was somewhere in Leeds that might have been... he's a big fan of sort of working man's clubs, and he met. I think they may have hired a room in one of those clubs. I just can't quite remember. It just came to me again there when you mentioned the darts. So.
That's a cracking story. Have you competed against world champions in any other sport in your lifetime, Dave?
I haven't thought about that, actually. Possibly not. I was talking to Ryan the other day about, when I was living in Edinburgh, when I first moved up there in 81, 82. I got to know some people who worked at the local Halifax office, and one of the guys from Lancashire, from Preston, a very good footballer, and he got me involved. I played for a pub team in Leeds, and I kind of, was looking for something like that, and I played for this amateur team. Well, I trained with them. They were really a bit too good for my standard, but it was a great bunch of lads to meet, and that was like a couple of times a week I would train with them. I didn't know anybody really in Edinburgh at the time. Of course, on Saturday, I'd go and watch them play, or sometimes you even get a game. And we played a pre-season friendly against a touring American team. Basically, but the two coaches were two Brazilian-born footballers. Both had been professional footballers. One, or if not both of them, definitely had played for Brazil, the international team. And the way I would describe him was, do you remember sort of Ferenc Puskas? When he was in the latter part of his career, he was sort of in his 50s, I think he was still playing, wasn't he? And he's quite a portly gent at the best of times, wasn't he? And these guys were sort of even a bit further on than that. And later on in the game, they came on to play just for a bit of fun. I went on as a substitute. You've never seen skill like it. They weren't particularly mobile, but they'd fire the ball at them. They would just kill it stone dead, turn one pace, then fire it out, a 30-yard pass to someone's feet. And so I can say I've played against ex-Brazilian international.
That's pretty impressive. Well, I turned down the chance to step into a boxing ring with a world kickboxing champion.
This wasn't Campbell McLaren offering us that opportunity, was it?
No, it wasn't, but it was actually a character I think Campbell would have liked a great deal, an equally unconventional boxing trainer. His name was Brendan Ingle, and he was a legend, particularly in Sheffield. The bit of Sheffield where this gym was in Winkle Bank. Now, I can say this as someone from Glasgow who's not serious. That was a tough old part of Sheffield.
Yeah.
So it was an old church hall, but basically, do you remember Nassim Hamed? Naz, the kind of really, really good, really talented boxer, probably late 90s, mid to late 90s.
I really liked Harold Graham, who I think was from Sheffield. I don't know if there's the same club, but... Absolutely. Harold
Graham came out of Brendan Ingle's gym as well.
Did he?
Dave Jnr. Harold Graham was a fantastic boxer. So I went down to interview Brendan Ingle. It was with Nassim Hamed. He was in his pub at the time, so I went into the gym there in Winkle Bank, and literally an old church hall. He ran it as an old kind of boys' club. Ultimately, it'd been, I think, and then he adapted it to be a boxing gym. So there were no frills about it. He said, "Tell you what," he said, I won't try and do the accent, but Pele Reid had been a world champion kickboxer, but was trying out boxing, crossing over into traditional boxing. He said, "Why don't you come in? You're a big lad. Why don't you go into the ring with Pele Reid for just a wee while there and see how you get on?" So naturally, fortunately, I think I was wearing brown trousers anyway. But as it turned out, what Brendan Ingle, who was very unconventional, was he got all his boxers to play chess because he wanted them to think about strategy and when's the right time to do something, when's the right time to step back, when's the right time to move forward. And so that was what he did. So his plan had been to set up a chess set in the middle of the ring
and to get me in there with Pele Reid, because he did that with quite a number of his boxers. But he's a fantastic character and a really brilliant trainer. 4 world champions came out of that tiny wee church hall. Johnny Nelson, Nassim, Kell Brook as well, I'm sure was one of his. It was a fantastic experience. It was the soul of boxing. There was no fancy anything. Well, we know, Alan, that sadly darts players aren't allowed to have a bevy while playing anymore. But fortunately, there's no such restrictions on the audience at darts events, and I believe that it's not unknown for them to enjoy the occasional sherbet. So can you tell us what's the experience like, Alan, being at a darts tournament in Glasgow, for example?
Yeah, I think having a drink at the event is probably considered an integral part of your evening. When you watch it on TV, if you look to the guys nearest to the board and actually can probably almost see the board, because bear in mind it's a sport that you're watching that you can't actually see anything. You can't actually see what's happening unless you look at the big screens. They have the tables, so these would be like tables of 12 or whatever, and you can presumably rent the whole table. Get a bunch of people on there. You probably get bar service. They'll have one of these guys going around with a drink in his backpack, ready to sort of squirt it out into however many pints you need. And the reason it's a great TV entertainment, I think, is because the fans get so into it. And obviously as the day goes on, or the evening goes on, for some reason they get more and more into it as they perhaps enjoy a refreshment a little bit more. You have at the Hydro. I've been at Hydro for a few different things. I went to Sports Personality of the Year award there, and it must hold about 10,000 people. So when you have the darts event, you have that, but you've then got people a distance away. I was lucky enough. One of my friends has the debentures at the SSE Hydro and invited me along. So we were in the hospitality lodge beforehand, and to be honest, people were hammered in there. It sort of kicked off a wee bit as well. You would never see that if you went to Kevin Bridges. I've seen Blondie, see anything like that. So that it becomes part and parcel of it. The Hydro's a cracking venue. In Glasgow city centre, just off the Clyde.
You get the low-level trains. It's quite a good option as well.
Kelvin Hall would be the closest subway, Alan, but the train would be the preferred option, I think.
Because you also have that overpass from the train station to there as well. So it's a nice, easy way to get there. And there with lots of nice restaurants and bars and that to go to before and possibly afterwards as well.
So that's the end of our episode chatting about the darts. We hope you've enjoyed us digressing into another sport. We'll be doing more of that throughout the year. We'd also like to hear from you as to what sports you'd like to hear about, or indeed what sports you particularly enjoy attending. Thanks very much. Until the next time.